Today, we soar the skies on a classic jet-setting adventure of yesteryear with Pan Am by Prospero Hall.
We also introduce a brand new segment to the show and give you some updates about what comes next. This is Jessica.
And I'm Bryce. You're listening to the Back to the Table Board Gaming Podcast. So I want to open up today's episode with a question for everyone. Jessica, you and I can answer this too. What has been your best experience flying in the modern day? Whether it be a domestic flight or international, we all know that flying is actually rather awful. It's a hellish experience these days, but we want to hear some positive stories. If you have any, comment from wherever you're listening. We want to hear about your best flying experience. Jessica, my answer to this question is kind of tough because I hate flying.
I know, I was actually wondering what you were going to say.
So what's your best experience flying then?
I want to say it was around 2007 or 8. I was flying home from college and I got a red eye. And it was like the first time I had ever been on a plane where they had the individual screens on the back of every seat. And it was like an interactive touch screen, so you could like watch episodes of your favorite shows, or there were games. And obviously I wasn't doing a lot of that because it was a red eye, so I went to sleep. But I had the whole row to myself. It was nice and quiet. I slept almost the entire time, and if I did wake up, there was entertainment right there at my fingertips, and I remember being like, this is the height of technology right here. This is beautiful. And in my opinion, flying has kind of gone downhill from there, but that was a really nice experience.
Yes, but even that experience pales in comparison to the experiences of yesteryear. Welcome to episode 4 of the Back to the Table podcast. We are looking at the game Pan Am today. If you are old enough to remember flying Pan Am, we especially want to hear from you. Let us know what that experience was like because, man, flying today is absolute garbage. This should be a fun one to get into.
Before we dive into today's episode, we have a couple of updates for you. First off, you might have noticed our episodes are disappearing from the streaming platforms after they've aired for a little bit. That's because we don't pay to stream our episodes. We're not that big and huge quite yet. So since we have the free version, we only get a certain amount of time that our episodes are on those streaming platforms. However, we are posting them all on YouTube and Rumble. So if you're interested, please go ahead and subscribe to us there, and that way you'll have access to all of the episodes anytime you want.
Yeah, we plan to eventually start paying for it, just not now. So there's definitely a benefit to jumping on YouTube and subscribing to us there. But also, we have some bonus content that we are making. We have one video up so far, an unboxing I did for Camp Grizzly. Not just an unboxing, but a valuable story attached to that video as well. You can check that out there. We've also started a blog on BGG. You can find us, I think our name is Bryce and Jessica, and we're going to start doing that as well. Also, one last thing, stick around till the end of today's episode because we have some exciting announcements about what's coming next for the show. We've been working on some stuff behind the scenes. All good stuff, should be very, very exciting. Jessica, we're featuring the game Pan Am today. Let us give you a quick rundown. Pan Am was released in 2020. The publisher was Prospero Hall and I believe Funko as well. Designer was Peter Lee. The artist was Miggy Blanco. The mechanisms in this game, mainly worker placement, route building, auction and bidding, and stock investment.
We'll get into the stats in a minute here, but before we do, we have a new segment for you. We're calling it Old, New, Borrowed, or Blue.
So, in Old, New, Borrowed, or Blue, me and Jess are going to talk about something that falls within one of those categories. Sometimes it'll be board game related, other times it'll be just kind of whatever we want. We feel that this is a nice, quick way to break up the show a bit, as well as give you a little insight to who we are outside of the board game space. So we thought it would be kind of fun. Given that this is the first time we're doing the segment, we are going to do something old, new, borrowed, and blue, all 4 of them. And Jessica, I will get us started today with something old. I don't have a lot of time to sit and watch movies, so I tend to throw on a movie when I'm working out, and I just kind of watch it as I'm going through the motions. And I recently watched a movie that is one of my absolute favorites, and that is There Will Be Blood. In watching it again, probably for the first time in a year, I gotta tell you, that movie is a masterpiece. That thing from start to finish is just so good. If you haven't seen it yet, first of all, shame on you. Secondly, after this episode, go and watch it. Daniel Day-Lewis in probably his best role ever as a early 20th century oil tycoon, and just the exploration of his character, a total sociopath, as he moves from being a silver miner to an up-and-coming oil man to just an absolute oil baron at the end of it, and everything he goes through and loses. It's a fantastic character study, mainly because a lot of people see a piece of themselves in this character, and I think it scares them, and I think that's a good film right there.
It is a really great film, and it's so good and it's so heavy, and I feel silly because the thing I always think of when I think about that film is the silliest thing. It's that, I drink your milkshake.
I drink your milkshake. I drink it up. I'm an oil man and I enjoy drinking other people's milkshakes. I simply go into restaurants when I'm not being an oil man and I drink them up. I could do that voice all day. I love that thing. I don't know how accurate the voice is, but yeah, fantastic movie. Just the character development, the pacing, the first 15 minutes of it are an absolute silence. And when Daniel Day-Lewis's character starts clashing with Paul Dano's character, like two peas in the same pod, just, it's so good. So definitely check that one out if you haven't. Loved that film. That'll bring us on into something new, which is actually related to There Will Be Blood, and it's a game that we recently backed called Brass Pittsburgh. Not too familiar with the Brass system. Neither Jessica or myself have played Brass Birmingham or Brass Lancashire. I know you're building routes, something to do with beer. It takes place in England. All of that doesn't really interest me, but Americana and the Industrial Revolution and oil and beer, that definitely interests me. So we backed this one. And I can't remember when it's going to be here, but I do know that they also watched There Will Be Blood, because the preview for that game on Kickstarter, they used their oil man voice the best that they could, just like I'm doing right now. I can't wait to play this one. Brass did not interest me at all until Pittsburgh came out, and I think it has to do with that Americana.
Yeah, I'm excited about that one. It'll be a lot of fun. Moving on to something borrowed, I'm going to talk about a couple of games that we have borrowed from a shelf of a friend. So recently we played two new games we hadn't tried before. One is Pondscape. It's a game with frogs, basically. A whole bunch of different kinds of frogs. Placing the cards strategically and trying to group your frogs together. It's a real thinker for how cute and simple it seems like it would be. The other one we played was Trinket Trove. You're just collecting random items. I think there's like a bidding element to it.
Well, you draft them.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, you draft them, but you have to bid cards to get cards. It's kind of a complicated system for a simple little game. That one wasn't really for us as much. The Pondscape, I think, was a little bit more our speed, but fun to try new things, especially when we don't have to buy them, because we probably wouldn't have bought either one of those. So it was good to know by just borrowing them.
Yeah, glad they're not in our collection. Was glad to have played them. I would give Pondscape another try. Trinket Trove, I think, is just not in my wheelhouse of games. It's a little beyond me, which is kind of embarrassing to say because it is so simple. But Pondscape, I would try again. The frogs were cool.
Yeah, those frogs were so cute. I mean, Trinket Trove was also very cute, but it was cute, and it burned my brain way more than I thought it had a right to for how cute it was. On to something blue. As you probably have heard us talk about, we live in Arizona, and it is just entering into the height of summer right now, and it is so stinking hot, so that is making us feel quite blue.
That's actually a real thing. Like, people get the summertime blues. It's real. I don't know if either of us are feeling it. We're just kind of annoyed that we sweat all the time.
And we're supposed to be getting monsoons, but we're not, so it's dry, which people always say, oh, it's a dry heat, it's not that bad. Okay, tell that to my sweat, because I'm still sweating, and I'm dehydrated. So definitely pretty blue about that.
So that was a lot of fun. Old, new, borrowed, or blue. We'll be doing that one again. I think that's going to be one that sticks around. In just a minute, though, we will get to our main event. We are going to be talking about the game Pan Am. We're going to be discussing how it works, strategies, what other people said about it, the whole 9 yards. Stay tuned.
In Pan Am, players square off as heads of their own fledgling airline business during the height of Pan Am's success. Play through decades of air travel history as you create your own globe-circling air system. Expand your fleet of planes, build airports, and outbid your rivals for landing rights. All with the goal of selling your hard-earned empire to Pan Am when the time is just right. But be careful not to be pushed out of the skies by your competitors before your golden moment arises.
All right, Jessica, our trays are up. Our seats are in their upright position. We are strapped in. We are ready to soar the skies with Pan Am here. Why don't you break down the stats for us?
All right, and these stats, as a reminder, come from BGG. So according to BGG, the rating of this game is a 7.5. It's ranked at 456. Strategy rank is 309. Current price new is about $15, but you can find it used for as low as $5. Complexity rating is 2.41 out of 5. The player count is 2 to 4, but according to BGG, it's best played at 3 or 4 players, with a playtime of 60 minutes, suggested age of 12 and up. This game soared into the top 500 almost immediately, with a steady ascension over the years to its current spot at that 456. So it's been pretty popular, and it's still growing in popularity, albeit slowly.
So the object in Pan Am is a fairly simple one. You want to hold the most stock in the company of Pan Am at the end of their 40-year reign in the skies.
What you do to get there is you grow your fleet of planes and airports, claim routes around the globe, sell those routes at a premium to Pan Am, and then use your earnings to invest in Pan Am stock.
All right, now in the last few episodes when we talked about a game, this was typically where we would talk about what the game does, how it works. But we're going to try something a little different today. Our goal in this section, instead of explaining how the game works as a whole and sounding a little too much like a how to play, which is definitely not good for an audio podcast, we're going to instead talk about just the 1 or 2 things that drive this game forward, that take you from beginning to end. And then how it works will be discussed in the strategy and what we think of it. We found that we were repeating ourselves a little bit, so hopefully this cleans that up. So Jessica, let's do that now. What would you say makes this game go?
I would say there's a couple of key elements in this game. The first one is that it's a worker placement game, but the worker placement is done by bidding. So you place your worker, and if you want to use a space that's already taken, you're not out of luck. You can actually outbid the person who previously claimed that space just by paying more. And so that kind of back and forth really drives what you're doing on your turns. It's kind of interesting because there is this back and forth. You could end up spending a lot of money just to do what you need to do, but it is limited. So there's only 4 spaces. So you can only do that so much, which is good because it kind of keeps it from getting really out of control.
But it does make that worker placement portion of the game really interesting. The other driving factor, I would say, is claiming routes. Throughout the game, you are going to be buying airplanes, and you're going to be putting those airplanes out on the main board, but you first have to claim routes to do that. So along with the airplanes, you're also going to be giving destination cards that represent the routes you're trying to connect. This is a major area of the game because these routes are going to not only give you money at the end of every round, Pan Am's also going to be buying them up, giving you even more money as the game goes. So route building is a huge part of the game, I would say.
Yeah, and the other really big part of it is that part where Pan Am comes in and starts buying the routes from you, which is a really interesting dynamic because when they buy your route, not only do you get money from Pan Am, but you also get your airplane back, which lets you build more routes. So it's kind of a necessary part of the whole mechanism. And then at the end of the Pan Am phase, you're buying stock in Pan Am, which is kind of funny. You're like selling them your plane or your route and then buying stock in their company, which is kind of a silly back and forth. But that's really the driving factor of the game. And those stock represent your points at the end of the game. What's interesting is that the value of the stock changes throughout the game. So that's really where it stays interesting.
So that's what makes the game go. Let's talk about an example of a turn, what you might see out there. So when a round starts, there's going to be an event that is triggered by Pan Am that kind of sets the course for how the round goes. Then players are going to take turns putting their workers out on the board, bidding for spaces so that they can do an array of things like build airplanes, things like that. Pan Am will, in a way, take its turn by gobbling up a route or two, paying out whoever may have owned it, and then everybody's going to have the option to buy some stock. That's more or less the meat and potatoes of any given turn, and you're going to do this for a series of 7 rounds. At the end of the game, whoever has the most stock is going to be the winner. If it is tied, well, you just share the victory.
Sounds like some fucking commie gobbledygook.
So now that we've given the basic meat and potatoes of the game, we're going to really dig into the strategy and talk about how you interact with the game and with the other players in the game to really play optimally. The first thing that I would say, and we kind of mentioned this a little bit, is to really pay attention to the price of the stock. So the stock price is going to fluctuate throughout the game. So you have to decide, am I going to buy the stock now at the current price? Do I think it's going to go up? Do I think it's going to go down? Do I need to save this money so that I can purchase airplanes or the actions that I need to take? Or do I want to really capitalize on this stock at the current value that it is now? And making that decision every single round is really key.
Yeah, I have that one too. It should be noted that the stock price is set at the start of every round when that Pan Am event comes up. There's a little stock tracker at the bottom of the board, and it's going to move up or down depending on what the card you draw at the beginning of that round says. So sometimes it'll say bump it up 1 or lower it 2 or whatever the case. And so, yeah, you definitely want to be strategic about when you buy that stock and how much of it you buy. I would add, too, that you want to watch what everyone else is doing as they buy stock, because if nobody bought any that round, or if they maybe only bought 1 or 2, this might be your chance to get ahead by spending a little more and buying that one extra one, because sometimes that is all the difference at the end of the game. You win by 1 or 2 stocks. Yeah,
we've definitely had that happen probably most of the time, where it's really just 1 or 2.
Right. So that kind of leads into the first thing I want to talk about. We mentioned it a little bit already, but pay attention to everything that is happening out there on the board and time all your moves, not just your stock, but all your moves accordingly. When somebody bids for a specific destination or when somebody wants to build an airport, watch that. See what they're trying to do. Maybe they're trying to encroach on something you're trying to build. You have to adjust to that.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And that actually kind of leads me into my next one, which is all of the destination cards. The first bid is free. But then if you want to outbid somebody, that's when you start paying money. And so I like to take advantage of those free ones. Like if nobody wants it, I'll take it. If somebody comes and outbids me, I usually am not fighting for those unless it's something that I really, really need. A lot of times I'm just like, it's just good to have extra cards. Because you can turn in 2 same colored cards to represent anything. So it's good to just have the extras just in case.
I think maybe we should break down the destination cards a little and explain how they work. So one of the actions you can take on the board is claim destination cards. And these are little miniature Pan Am posters representing the different areas on a map. By claiming a destination, you now have the ability to fly out of or into that destination from somewhere else. So the idea is to get 2 cards that connect to each other on the board, hold on to those, and then use that to put a plane out there on that route. If you don't have the city you're looking for, you can grab any 2 cards of that specific color that city's in and turn them in kind of as a wild instead. So to your point, when you're talking about starting small, take the free destinations when you can get them. But I think too, what that does is it gives you an idea of what somebody else might be going for.
Yeah, and it's definitely good to pay attention to what other people are going for. And you want to pay attention to where Pan Am is going as well.
Yeah, I have this one too.
So the way the Pan Am works is at the end of the round, you're going to roll the Pan Am die. And that event card in the beginning tells you how many times you're going to roll it. The routes have different patterns on them. So the die will show you which pattern Pan Am is going to follow that particular round. And so they'll just buy whatever the next route is on that pattern. If it gets, you don't know what pattern's going to show up when you roll the die, but you want to give yourself a chance of being gobbled up because that gives you the income from them buying the route, and it also gives you your plane back so that you can build another route later.
Important thing to note, Pan Am is not gobbling up the biggest routes. So like the real big money-making routes, it doesn't touch. There are options to sell the route to Pan Am if you draw certain cards, directive cards, which we'll talk about those in a minute. But for the most part, Pan Am is gobbling up small routes. So there's this balancing act that you can have out there on the board where your smaller routes don't make you as much money, but they might make you more depending on what Pan Am's willing to pay for them. And then you can hold on to your bigger routes to make money every round. And creating that balance is very important. We talked about directive cards, so let's just mention it now. Directives are a spot you can play on the board. Now, it's not a spot that you bid for, but there is a limit to how many people can put their workers here. Directives are a stack of cards, and they give you some type of bonus action that you can take. Sometimes it'll tell you when to take it. Other times you can do it anytime. Some extra money or whatever the case. There's a bunch of different bonuses. But the reason you want to land in a directive space whenever you can or whenever there might not be another option has to do a lot with its main benefit, and that is at the start of the next round, before turn order establishes who puts what pieces out first, anyone who is in the directive space gets to put their pieces out even before the first player. So if you really need something that you're working your way towards, and maybe you're only halfway there by the end of round, say 2, if you got the space in the directive slot, when round 3 starts, you can go right for finishing up whatever it is you were trying to do. Maybe claiming a route, maybe building a plane, whatever the case. Being in the directive spot is very, very beneficial in that regard.
Yeah, I actually had that too. But then I also had on the same token, going first is not necessarily the best thing because of the bidding. If you only have a limited number of funds, you might not necessarily want to start with the thing you need the most, especially if you know that somebody else needs it too. If you see that they only have so much money, maybe you wait for them to go there. And then you outbid them and you know they can't afford to outbid you. Whereas if you go first, then they outbid you, then in order to get the spot back, you have to pay even more. So it's kind of advantageous to not go first in the spots that are most important to you, depending on what your opponents seem to be going for.
That's true. This actually takes me to an interesting one. Tell me what you think about this one. I have don't mess with your opponents too much. This probably definitely goes more for like a 3 or 4 player game, because this is a game where you're bidding and the rich can get richer. It's fairly balanced, but if you start picking on one person, they may hit you really hard when you're at your lowest, or everybody else at the table will be like, oh, you're getting really rich picking on this guy. Now we're going to gang up on you. It's one of those games in my mind, especially with more players than 2, where you want to kind of do your thing as quietly as possible and not outbid people too much. Because you don't want them, outbidding you when you need something. Kind of stay out of their way and only kind of strike when the most strategically advantageous or when you really, really need something.
Well, and I think also it's kind of a tight economy in this game. I feel like I always say that about every game, but the funds, because you want to keep as much money as possible to buy that Pan Am stock, you don't want to be overspending your money. So if you're just outbidding somebody just to screw them out of something, that's really not serving you as much as really bidding on the things that actually are going to push your game forward.
Yeah, if you're playing competitively and you're trying to win yourself, it doesn't do you as much good to screw with people for the hell of it. So that's what I meant by don't mess with opponents too much. Just do your thing. Sometimes you'll have to mess with them, but most of the time you're able to play out your own strategy. And that's important because you don't want to get ganged up on, because if people gang up on you in this one, you can get buried. You can get absolutely buried. Another one I have is buy an airport. Get your airports out there. So the airport's one of the spaces you can land on, and if you win the bid, you can build an airport. And once you have an airport, you can put it on any destination on the map. Now you no longer need that particular destination card to move flights in and out of it. I would suggest putting your airport on a space that has a lot of flights ingoing and outgoing, because that gives you more options for routes that you can build for half the cost because you don't need that card anymore.
Yeah, that's true. You really want to be strategic about where you put your airports. Don't just think like, oh, I want to build this one route and I only have the one side of it. Let me buy an airport there. You want to connect it to as many routes as possible so you can really maximize it. Because the airports are one of the more expensive elements of the game. But if you are strategic about your placement, they can really pay off for you. The last thing I would say that I have is looking ahead, because some of the airplanes, so we mentioned that there's the smaller routes and the bigger routes. So there's also different sized airplanes. So the planes correspond to the size of the route that you can put them on. And the larger airplanes don't actually become available until later in the game. So you want to pay attention to when they're going to become available and what they're going to cost. And think about the fact that only one person is going to be able to buy that plane when it first becomes available. So if you are wanting to claim those bigger routes, you have to think ahead, make sure you have enough money, not only to afford it, but to be able to outbid someone for it, and make sure that you have the destination cards to make it worthwhile.
Yeah, I got that too. It's definitely important to claim a big route and build a big plane, especially at the end of the game when they pop up. This is your chance to earn a lot of money. And as we said before, Pan Am doesn't buy those big routes, at least not through the process of gobbling up the routes. There's cards that will come out that will allow you to sell those routes to Pan Am. So this is a good way of receiving income from both ends, right? You have a big payout from your large route, and then maybe Pan Am buys up some of your smaller routes. That's ideal. We had mentioned that before. So yeah, definitely get that big plane.
Yeah, and we should mention the routes themselves give you residual income. So I think it's at the beginning or the end of every round, you claim income from all the routes that you have.
That's before Pan Am starts buying them up. Yeah, so you can make money from a route before Pan Am buys it from you.
Yeah, but then when Pan Am buys it, that's a one-time payout. So it is a bigger payment, but the residuals are coming every single round. So you really want to balance out those two income streams.
If you can. That actually takes me to one I wrote down here, especially if you're playing with more than two players. Sometimes you're not going to get those routes that Pan Am is eating up. So if you're not going to get money from Pan Am that way, what you're going to want to do is give yourself a powerhouse of an airline system. Like if Pan Am's not buying your routes, that's okay. You got routes that have such a payout, it does not matter. This is kind of hard to do, but if you're not going to get on the spaces you need to be bought out, you're going to have to adapt and adjust your game.
Yeah, I think this is a game that's very much about adapting. As much as you can try to think ahead and plan ahead, there's so much that you can't predict. You don't know what's going to happen to the stock prices. You don't know what the event is going to do. You don't know which routes Pan Am is going to buy. You don't know what destination cards are going to become available. So you really have to just every round look at what's out there and kind of make your decisions according to what's happening right now.
Yeah, that kind of circles back to the first thing we said, like pay attention to everything on the board, because there are going to be a lot of times where you do have to pivot, if for no other reason than you just can't afford the space that you really need. So it's like, okay, what else can I do? There's a lot of room for maneuvering, and you need to, for sure.
So that just about wraps up our strategy sesh. Coming up, we'll have a more general discussion about our thoughts on the game.
Yes, but first, Pan Am was a real company, and their history is absolutely fascinating. We're going to take a quick break to give you some of the facts about the company today's game is based on.
Let's be real, air travel in the modern day is absolute ass. Between hostile TSA agents, constant delays, ever-increasing prices for continuously smaller seats, no one would blame you for comparing air travel to a nightmare. But believe it or not, this wasn't always the case. Airlines used to go out of their way to make flying a dream, and no other airline in American history made flying more of an exciting, romantic, and adventurous experience than Pan Am. Here are roughly five, amazing facts about the real-life airline today's featured game is based on. While Pan Am is remembered today as a behemoth of the skies, its origins were surprisingly humble. Originally headquartered in the Florida Keys, Pan Am began as a single plane mail carrier between Key West and Havana, with its first flight taking place in October of 1927. By January of 1928, though, passenger service to Havana was also offered, being one of the first airlines to do so. This aggressive expansion was thanks to one man, Juan Terry Tripe. While Pan Am was initially founded by a group of investors, Tripe is officially regarded as the company's founder, as it was his vision and leadership who would make Pan Am what it would eventually become. By 1929, Pan Am had regular flights to destinations throughout the Caribbean, as well as Central and South America. This made Pan Am America's largest international airline, but they were also innovative in several other ways. Pan Am heavily contributed to the practice of constant radio communication between aircraft, state-of-the-art weather reporting, and improved navigation systems. These things were vital in making international travel for all airlines safer and generally more possible. While all the small technological stuff is impressive, Pan Am is most remembered for their iconic planes and flights themselves. The late 50s to early 70s is regarded as Pan Am's golden era, where many of the things we think of when we think of Pan Am planted their roots. You'll find many of the planes in the game Pan Am as well. The initial two-engine Clipper all the way up to their most iconic plane, the Jumbo 747. You've likely seen pictures of this one. 9 extra-large seats in a row with 2 large aisles in between them. Giant food carts where real food and drinks were served. And that's just coach. A trip up the spiral staircase would bring you to the first-class lounge that looked more like an upscale bar than an airplane. This was the pinnacle of Juan Tripe's vision. Luxurious flights that were affordable and accessible to anyone going anywhere. It wasn't just a flight. Flying Pan Am was an event, a style, and a vibe, with a sound, look, and even art style that separated it from any other airline that's ever existed. It might be hard for us modern air travelers to appreciate just how enjoyable a Pan Am flight could be, seeing as flying today feels more like you're a piece of cargo instead of a passenger. But there was definitely a reason people donned their Sunday best when traveling Pan Am. Sadly, though, all good things come to an end, and Pan Am's end was actually quite tragic. The 1970s saw a series of economic downturns which affected fuel prices especially. This made that luxurious style much harder to keep up. However, it wasn't until 1988 when the nails began to hammer into Pan Am's coffin. In December of that year, Pan Am Flight 103 was blown up mid-air by a bomb snuck on board by terrorists. This led to not only the deaths of 270 people, but also completely destroyed Pan Am's reputation, as well as all but bankrupted it due to lawsuits and a slew of citations by the FAA. They were able to hang on for a few more years until 1991 when Pan Am's final flight touched down in Miami, Florida, marking the end of an era. Although gone, Pan Am is far from forgotten. Over the last 35 years, Pan Am memorabilia has been sought after by collectors and fans of the airlines alike, with some posters and uniforms selling for quite a large sum of money. It also holds a special place in the hearts of those who remember the jet-setting adventures experienced on Pan Am. Unfortunately for us modern jet-setters, though, the closest we'll ever get to that magical experience is by visiting the Pan Am Museum located in Long Island, New York, which, if you're a fan of Pan Am, is definitely worth visiting. Soak up all that amazing history before attending one of several events they host throughout the year. There's also a podcast dedicated entirely to the history and legacy of Pan Am. We've posted a link to it in the notes if you want to check it out. And of course, we have the Pan Am board game, which we will get back to discussing right now.
I'll just start by saying I really enjoyed this one. This one's been I don't know about favorite, but I've really had a great time with it every time we've gotten it to the table since buying it.
I really like it too. I feel like it's so thematic. And what I mean by that is I can't think of another skin you could put on these exact mechanics where it would make sense.
I can't either. I'm sure somebody could, but I think it works for Pan Am. I think it's kind of an interesting, bold move by Prospero Hall and Funko to take a company that about 2020 when the game came out, the company had been gone for like 30 years, and they were like, you know what? Let's make a game about them. But the reason I think it works is because of the historical flavor all over the game, like you said. You look at the game and just visually it looks like something from the 1960s. It has that Pan Am vibe and that feel. So just right off the bat, it's a pleasing looking game. Beyond just the aesthetics, though, like it's a very clever game that forces engagement both on and off the table because you're bidding for spaces on the board, so there's a lot of engagement there. And then there's all the shit that you talk off the table, like, oh, you son of a bitch, I wanted that space. No, what are you thinking? Or oh, how much stock are you buying? That's really fun.
Yeah, it's one where you really have to pay attention to what other people are doing, but in a way where I don't know, it's not like chess where you have to like really think 3 moves ahead or whatever. It's more of a fun level of engagement than like my brain is completely fried, you know?
You know what I really like? When you look at the board about halfway through the game and you got your planes out there and your routes are built and you can see Pan Am's creeping up on you and you're making a lot of the money and you've got this machine going, that's a very satisfying feeling. And this game gives many opportunities to get that in a variety of different ways. Maybe you build your planes first, or maybe you collect your cities first. There's different avenues you can go. So it's not a one size fits all process.
Yeah, and what I really love about this game is that it's almost impossible to predict who the winner is going to be because you have no idea what the stock price is going to do. So if somebody buys a whole bunch of stock early on, you might think, oh crap, they have a huge lead. And then maybe somebody else ends up building a crazy machine where they make a lot of money. And maybe you start thinking, oh no, that person's definitely going to win. But then they wait until the end to buy their stock. And let's say the stock price went way up. So even though they have a ton of money, they're not able to buy nearly as much stock as somebody else had accumulated. It's just you really don't know. You can't predict the outcome just based on who seems to have the most powerful machine or who has the most money at any given moment. Like there's really just so many different factors to consider. But I love that you really don't know until the last second when you're counting the score who the winner is.
True. The money is unique in this game. Well, not unique, but you don't often see the size of somebody's coin purse as like not a factor in are they going to win or not. But in this game, it's not about the money; it's about the stock. But then again, I don't know because sometimes it can get a little out of hand. Like somebody could just have the stock go completely in their favor and completely out of favor for someone else. Like the money, the stock ratios just didn't line up for you. And there can be runaway winners in this game. So while I think you're right, you don't know who's going to win until the end. If the game kind of stays at that even keel, there is potential for there to be a runaway winner about halfway through, I would say. And this has happened in a 2-player game, just me and you.
Yeah, but I think it's only happened once.
True, but it can happen, and it should be worth noting. I want to go back to player interaction here. The on the table, off the table. It should be said that the player interaction here in this game is fairly mean, and take that. Even if it's not quite like incidental, even if you didn't mean to do it, whenever you do interact with somebody, you're usually screwing them out of something they were trying to get.
That's definitely true. And it's a less fun part of the game, but I think for me, actually, I like the game better at 2 players than more because there's less of that. When you have more players, there's a lot more likelihood that you're going to go for the same thing that somebody else is going for. And you have to outbid someone. You have to screw somebody out of what they want because there's just not that many spaces out there. When you have 2 players only, it's a little bit easier to stay out of each other's way.
True. It depends on the type of game you like to play because I think as you scale up in this game, the interaction becomes a little more competitive and you might like that. So I think the game scales well depending on what you're looking for. If you want something more relaxed, like you said, 2 players works fine. If you want something where the decisions are a lot harder, a 4-player game can really make this one shine.
Yeah, I think it just, like you said, it depends on what kind of game you're looking for. I generally am not a very big fan of like the take that element in any game. It's just not my style of how I play. Not that I can't do it. I can, and I do it well. I just prefer not to.
But for an auction and bidding game, though, because we've said before we don't like these games too often, typically because if you get a bad start, when it comes time for bidding for things you need, you don't have the money. And then as things get more expensive over time, you're still behind and everything just kind of doesn't work out. This game, even though there is auction and bidding in it, it's not as punishing as some other games that have that element. Because if you get outbid for an airport, that's okay. I can build an airplane now because the person who is buying the airport is probably not building an airplane. So you have a different path you can take to get to where you want to go. And I think that's what helps make the game not so punishing.
Yeah, I also like that there are spots that don't cost as much or don't cost any money at all. And so having those options makes the bids feel less punishing too. Because in some games, if you get outbid and you don't have the money, now you're just screwed. Like there's nothing you can do this turn. You have wasted a turn. But in this case, if you get outbid and you can't do the thing you wanted to do, there are a couple of other options. So you're still doing something. And it's something that's actually going to be able to move your game forward one way or another.
It doesn't hurt either that this game is actually really easy to learn.
That's true. It's a very simple game. It's very straightforward, actually.
Very straightforward. For a game that has a lot of complexity into how it's played, it's one of those games, right, where it's easy to learn, but the complications come from your timing and then also the timing of everybody else. And I think that's what helps give the game a lot of variety, not just in the Pan Am cards that come out and raise the stock and different events will do different things. That gives the game a lot of variety, but also who you play with and how they're playing really factors into what goes on the board. And within factoring all of that in, there's a lot of deep thinky choices to make about timing. And that's a pretty good combination for a game, especially one that was on the shelves at Target not that long ago for a relatively good price.
Yeah, honestly, for the price of this game, I'm amazed at how much game you get. And the quality of the components, really. Like, it's such a great deal for what it is. So that's actually a good moment to segue into our next section here, which is another kind of new thing we're trying, where we're going to really talk about the artwork, the components, and the rule book.
Theme, too. I'll start this off by saying the retro art and how it ties into the thematics of Pan Am and what Pan Am was is amazing.
I love the look of this game. It's so retro, it's vintage, it's clean. I feel like the understated color scheme really works with the theme too.
That Pan Am blue and white, very basic, but just so distinct. Like you said, that very clean look. I love the travel posters that represent the destination cards. That artwork is so quintessential Americana, so quintessential Pan Am. Now, I'm a big nerd when it comes to like Pan Am. I'm a huge fan of just the history and what they represented and stuff. So maybe it gets me a little more, but I just cannot say enough about the artwork. I love it.
I love the way that they have the little design for the different airlines that you play as, and the colors for those too. I feel like they work really well with the Pan Am colors. It all just makes you feel like you're in the 60s.
What did you think of that map? Because or at least at first glance, it took me some getting used to. When you unfold the board and look at the world map for the first time, it's a little funky, isn't it? Because it doesn't look like a globe. It's actually like oddly stacked, like the countries are oddly stacked on each other, like you're looking at the globe sideways.
You know, I can't say that I noticed that, but now that you pointed it out, it is a little funky.
Yeah, it takes a little while to get used to. Nothing like bad. It's very noticeable, or at least for me. I guess you didn't notice it, but I noticed it. You had mentioned earlier the plane and player pieces just being great, and they are. The little planes that come with this game, for again what the game costs. I think we spent $20. No, we spent $7 when we bought it because we bought it on clearance. For $7, you got to check out these planes if you never have before. They're amazing.
Yeah, they're really great looking like miniatures, but also something I love about the planes is that so there's different sizes. There's the 1, 2, 3, and 4, and that corresponds to the size of the route you can buy, which tells you how much residuals they earn. But it's kind of hard to tell, like unless you have one of every size in your fleet, it's hard to tell the difference. So what they have is they have notches on the wings. So the size 1 has 1 notch on either wing, size 2 has 2 notches, etc. And I find that to be so helpful, and it also looks good. Like it looks like a design choice but it's actually giving you information.
Yeah, that does work really well. Do you know what else works really well for me in this game is the fact that it comes with a soundtrack that you can look up on Spotify or wherever you listen, and you're going to get the music you think you're going to get. Bossa nova, instrumental jazz. We had mentioned in the historical facts. I mean, this company really did set a sound and a feel for what they were, and I think this music brings it out the most fantastic way. You can also enjoy this game with your favorite cocktail, which kind of further immerses you into the theme of Pan Am because on Pan Am you got to drink cocktails as if you were sitting in a lounge. So that works really well. You know, you think about just how dry these mechanics are, right? Worker placement, auction and bidding, very dry mechanics that they were able to cover in just such strong thematic elements, both on the table and off, I think is really awesome.
Yeah, I can't say enough good things about it, just artistically, aesthetically. It's so simple, really, but just really effective. So the rule book in this game, I feel like it's kind of perfect. Like it's immersive just a little bit. For me, I find those really immersive rule books to be kind of annoying and cheesy. But this one I feel like it's just a touch of that like welcome to Pan Am. That it's just charming and it kind of gets you into it. But it's just very simple, it's straightforward. They have great images and examples and it's really easy to learn.
Yeah, it reads almost like a pre-board flight presentation that the stewardesses do. Like you can almost hear that like bright, chipper '60s voice as you read the rule book. And the rule book actually has that Pan Am stewardess, that classic iconic uniform, like in the rule book, explaining things, pointing things out. Get the classic pilot guy. So the rule book's drenched in theme, and it reads real easy. Like the way they explain stuff. Although I don't know, they front load the concepts before they tell you how to play. And if you're a new board gamer, maybe that confuses you. I can't remember if that used to confuse us when we first started getting into this hobby hardcore, but the way it reads now for someone who's played a lot of games, I like it.
To me, I think in general, that's always been helpful to me to understand the concepts before they start talking about the gameplay. I think in other rule books where they give you the gameplay and then you have to figure out what, like, the context of what they're talking about, that confuses me more.
Right, and the benefit of it too is it's a small rule book, so there's not a lot to learn. Like we said, this game is very very easy to learn. I think the examples in the rule book are very detailed as well, so I think they did a really good job with this game.
So the different areas on the board are identified by letters, and they have those letters not only listed in the rulebook, but they have them in the same kind of font. So visually, it's very easy to kind of match up what you're looking at in the rulebook versus like where it's happening on the board. I feel like that's a really helpful thing too. Because there's nothing more confusing than you're reading a rule book and you have no idea like what section they're talking about. You have to go back to that first page where it shows you what's what to be like, wait, what? What section is that again? I don't know what you're talking about. But this one, it's every step of the way. You don't have to backtrack. It's very like in your face. This is what you're doing.
Yeah, it's clever, but it's not so clever that you roll your eyes. I like that. I like everything about this game. This again, they just do such a good job at immersing you into the theme that is Pan Am, into the company that was Pan Am. And I think for me, it stands out and really shines and fires on all cylinders. Like it was really hard to come up with critiques of this game because flying sucks. Like modern flying, you feel like you're cattle. Like they stuff you into this small seat. The planes are tinier. You don't get real food. God help you if you drink the coffee. And to just think there used to be a company and a time when flying was a real experience. It was a real event. And sadly, this game is as close as we're going to get to that because I don't think air travel is going to get better. It just sounds and seems like it's getting worse. I hate flying, but when I play Pan Am, I'm like, man, this is how flying should have been. And I think that's what this game does for me, and that's what helps me get so immersed into what it's doing, from the rule book to the gameplay and everything else.
Yeah, I think there's a reason why Pan Am was such a successful airline, and this game really captures it.
Kind of makes you sad in a way, though, too, because it's like, well, we'll never experience this. We're
No,
just going to keep getting crammed in there like sardines.
but at least we get to experience the board game version of it.
TSA agents yelling in your face all the time.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
God, I hate those people so much. But yeah, Pan Am, it's awesome.
So let's talk a little bit about what others said about the game.
So, Jess, this game has a lot of praise overall. People compliment the artwork, they compliment the gameplay. This shines for almost everyone in these categories. Many were actually very surprised by what they got out of this game. People went into it expecting very, very little, right? Because it's a $20 game from Target. Not really sure what to do with all that. Target's games, especially back in 2020, very hit and miss. And then here comes Pan Am, and everyone was just very, very surprised.
Yeah, I mean, I would count us among them. I
Oh,
think
yeah.
you were probably more excited about this one than I was, but I was not expecting much, and I was really blown away by what this game ended up being.
For what you get in that box, especially for the price, but just take the price out of it. Just there's a lot going on in Pan Am, and to find it on the shelf at Target in 2020, oh yeah, I agree with people 100%. It was very surprising. I didn't know what to expect, and we got a lot of the game out of that.
So some people said the plain pieces could have been better, which I'm confused by. I feel like the plain pieces are amazing.
Yeah, I don't know what they're talking about either. Like, what do they? Again, let's bring that price back into it. For $20, you get a slew of planes that look like they were made with a lot of care. They look like model airplanes. I don't know, were people expecting miniatures?
Yeah, I mean, you could have had like tokens, and for the price, that's what I would expect. So I was actually quite impressed by the plain pieces.
Yeah, that's a pretty weird complaint. But here's one that's not so weird. And I actually agree with people on this because this tripped us up the first couple of times too. The most common gripe, even from people who liked the game, was that the landing rights thing is a bit confusing. Now, how it works is that if you have a card with the city on it, you have landing rights to that city. The mistake a lot of people made, that we made ourselves, that the rulebook is not that clear on, is that we thought you had to turn in that city card in order to take a flight out of it. The truth is, you only have to turn cards back in if you're replacing them with a different thing. So like if you needed Beijing, for example, but you don't have Beijing, you have two other cities that match the color of Beijing, you turn those in. But if you had Beijing, you keep it.
Yeah, I do remember that tripping us up. And we did that wrong, I think probably the first couple of times we played.
So did a lot of people. And if you look back in the rule book, for as good as the rule book is, in that area, it does slip up a bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think if we had read it more closely, we probably would have caught it. But I think because the two are kind of right next to each other and they're similar but different, it's an easy confusion to have.
Well, we were giving up cities that we didn't need to, and I think for a while it made the game a lot more complicated in a bad way.
It made it seem like hard and almost impossible. That's true.
Well, right, because you give up that card, but you still need it to take off and do other routes and stuff with it. You have to wait till it shows back up in the deck of posters, and that could take a very long time. And now you're spending a lot more time bidding for cities just so you can have them and turn in to represent that city again.
That's definitely a really good point. I didn't even think about that until other people said it, but
Definitely a very, very well worthwhile gripe. But let's talk about some gripes that people had, or at least one person had that to me didn't make any sense. There's some major contrast here by one reviewer, one specific guy, but I wanted to bring it up. According to this particular reviewer, the bidding at each section was too repetitive for them. They found the goal of the game to be very odd. This idea of building up your empire just to let Pan Am buy it, that tripped them up. They found the directive space and the stock phase, they found that it bloated the game unnecessarily, and they didn't find the game scaled well between 2 and 4 players. So let's go back and break all these down point by point, because I thought this was really weird. They felt bidding at each section was too repetitive. I didn't find that repetitive at all.
yeah, I actually think because the different sections, like not every section has bidding, they all had different prices. The destination cards started at 0. And then if they weren't purchased on the last round, you actually get money by picking them up. So that's so different from all the other sections. I I didn't feel like it was repetitive at
Yeah,
all.
you're right. We forgot to mention that any destination cards that don't get bought, you put money on them, making them more worthwhile to get the next time. I totally forgot about that rule, but yeah, repetitive. It's also weird too because like it's where the action of the game is, competing with one another to grab an airport, and then competing with one another to build a route, and then competing with one another to buy a plane. That's like the competition of the airline business. It's trying to bring that competition that you would see in real life to the board. I think it actually does it really well. I don't find it repetitive at all. That was weird.
The next one, though, the goal of the game is a little bit odd if you think about it. But that's also what makes it so thematic. Like, I can't think of another theme where it would make sense to build up your empire, sell it to a company, and then invest in that company. Like, it's so specific, but it works.
I think it works too. Nothing about that made me give the game a second look or go, oh, that's unappealing. In fact, I think it's what makes it interesting.
I
It's
think
kind of what
so
makes it
too.
stand out, right? Like you're going to build this up just to hope a company buys it out. But, that's also realistic to running a business sometimes. People will start businesses in hopes that they'll get bought out so they can have the capital to start a different, bigger business. So maybe this person just doesn't understand how economics works.
Maybe. I mean, and it's kind of funny that they say the stock phase bloats the game unnecessarily because the stock phase is kind of the meat of the game. Like, that's the whole game is you're buying the stock. The directive thing I kind of get. It's a little confusing, and sometimes we would forget to do it.
Well, forgetting to do it and it not being an essential part of the game are two different things. Forgetting to do it and saying it's bloated, two different things. I don't find the directive space to be bloated at all. I think it's a good way of giving somebody who didn't get the upper hand in this round the upper hand in the next round. And that also forces players who did well in this round to pay attention to what that person is doing in the next round. It keeps you on your toes and it makes the game exciting and it keeps it moving and it keeps it very, very interactive in ways that don't require take that. It's just, I need to pay attention. Bloat, I don't know. It almost sounds like this guy was looking for a different game altogether.
Yeah, I mean, it's not every game is going to be everyone's cup of tea, and that's totally understandable. But these are kind of odd criticisms.
Yeah, almost, I don't know, hating for hating's sake, but the idea that the game doesn't scale well is also weird. It's a different game at 2 players than it is at 4 players. But again, like we said, it scales depending on what you want out of the game. If you want something a little more aggressive, you're going to get that out of a 4-player game. If you want something a little more casual, you're going to get that out of a 2-player game. Again, not sure what this guy was looking for. One more thing here that people said a lot. Did you get reminded of Monopoly or Pandemic when playing this? Because a lot of people said they did.
No, I didn't. But to be fair, I haven't played either of those games in a very, very long time.
I think the Pandemic connection comes from the map. If you look at the Pandemic map and the Pan Am map, they do kind of look similar. Like they're both fairly bland with just a couple of city names on them. There's nothing really that stands out about them. In my opinion, as we learned from episode 3, I don't think that works for Pandemic, but I think it works for Pan Am because of that stylistic look we know Pan Am to have.
That's true. I mean, yeah, I guess you could say the maps look kind of similar. I don't know. Again, I haven't played Pandemic in such a long time. I didn't particularly enjoy that one.
No, me neither.
So I feel like I can't really speak to it, but it certainly didn't ring that bell for me.
Now, what about Monopoly? I guess the idea of like buying routes?
Well, no.
Yeah, I don't know either. That one was
don't know.
weird. Somebody, if you can explain that to us, go ahead and let us know in the comments section. All right, now it's time to rate the stats. How accurate did we find these things to be? Starting with the rating, Jess, 7.5, higher or lower for you?
I think that sounds about right to me. If anything, I would rate it a little bit higher.
So would I.
But it's not like a favorite that I would bring to the table regularly, but I do really, really enjoy it. So that might be right, just about where it is.
I would bump that up to an 8, maybe even an 8.5. I think I enjoy this one a little more than you. The thematic tie-ins, the way the game plays, that satisfaction from building your empire. really good stuff. Especially, I factor in the surprise factor. Like looking at this game doesn't look like much, and then you get all this game out of it. So I would bump that up. It sits at 456 overall in the list of games on Board Game Geek. I find that to be a deserving number. I mean, I don't know the other 455 games that's above it, but I can see where this one ranks in the top 500, and I would definitely put it there.
I was thinking exactly the same thing. It does not surprise me at all that it's in the top 500. It also doesn't surprise me that it's not like in the top 10. It's not
Right.
one of those like super hotness, big popular games, but it's a good game and it deserves to be up there.
I think that has to do with the way it plays, and it's approachable no matter your level of gaming. I think that's why it falls into the top 500. This one's always kind of hard to gauge, but the strategy ranking of 309, that's saying that there are 308 games rated higher in strategy. Admittingly, I'm not quite sure what people mean when they rank the strategy, but I would say it's a fairly strategic game. So I would call that accurate if we're just saying, is it a strategic game or not? I think there's a lot of the strategic depth to this one, especially for what it is.
Yeah, I mean, that seems probably right to me. I think I was a little surprised by that number. I was expecting other people to rate it lower, like that it would be at a higher number.
I think it might have to do with how much you have to pay attention, because like a lot of big crunchy Euro games are almost solitaire play, right? Like you place your worker, you do your thing, you're building your board, you're collecting your points. This game really does put you in the crosshairs of everybody, and everybody's in your crosshairs, but it's not a combat game. You're just trying to build your business the best you can, and you're all working from the same 5 spots, and you're all trying to get on the same map.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I think to me, it's definitely very strategic. It doesn't seem like the kind of thing that most other people, like other games that are kind of like this, where we're like, oh, that's a really complex game. Other people tend to say, it's simple. So I was just a little bit surprised, but not because I disagree, just because, I don't know, people usually aren't agreeing with us.
Well, everybody would agree with the price points. I have it as phenomenal. For what you get out of this, at $20 or less, come on, that's a steal.
Absolutely. I think that, I mean, I would even pay more. I would expect this game to probably be $40 just for what it is.
And remember, we paid $7 for it. This was back when Target was like moving games in and out, so they would put everything that was about to move out on clearance. And I think this was back before they knew what they had, and we were able to take advantage of that. You can get it used for $5. I mean, man, that's hard to beat. We're trying to avoid recommending things, but just let's be real. That's a hard to beat price for this game.
For what you get, absolutely. Now, complexity 2.41.
So that puts us just under medium.
Yeah, like a little bit less than average in terms of complexity. And I feel like I don't know what other people are talking about when they say complexity. If you're talking about like how complex the gameplay is, that sounds about right. If you're talking about like how hard you have to think about it, that seems low to me.
I think when you put together how easy or hard is it to learn, how complicated is the strategy, you mangle all those things together, and you get kind of an average. I think that's how people do it. Mangle is a bad word for that, but that's the first word that came to mind. I don't know what the hell is wrong with me. I'd call it accurate. I don't think it's much heavier than that. I think a lot of the heaviness comes out of trying to figure out what other people are going to do, but the gameplay in and of itself, not that complicated.
That's true. The gameplay is very, very simple and straightforward. So what about the player count? And we did talk about this a little bit, and I think we're on different pages with this. For me, I definitely preferred it too. I'm not as into the competitive take that kind of thing where you have to get in somebody else's way to get what you need done. And it's easier to avoid that at 2 players.
It is, but there's also a chance in a 2-player game that you can have a runaway person. With 3 or 4 players, there's more people out there to keep everyone kind of from getting too much ahead, right? Because if one guy gets ahead, maybe 1 or 2 players prevent it, and then the next round, 2 other players are preventing that guy. I can see where people like the 3 or 4 because it keeps the game balanced, but we've only ever played this at 2 with, I think, 1 exception, and I love it at 2. I think it's fine at 2, but I get where people are saying 3 or 4 is ideal. I think it's great at any player account.
Yeah, I mean, We liked it at 3 too. But yeah, I see what you're saying, being more balanced with more.
So they have a playtime of 60 minutes. I would say this is accurate enough. The one thing we haven't talked about is how long the game can go, depending on how thinky you're going to be with your decisions.
That's true. If you let somebody take their time in deciding what they're going to do, it can be a much longer game.
Yeah, because there's so many times in the game where it's like, I want to build a plane. Oh, wait, no, I can't afford that plane, or that's not going to get on the route I need. So never mind, let me go here instead. It depends on how loose or tight you want to be with, how a turn is taken. But we've played this game as fast as like 45 minutes, but we've also played this game as slow as 90, and that's with 2 players. So I think a lot of it factors in, but I think 60 minutes is accurate enough if you know the game.
Yeah, that sounds about average.
12 plus for suggested age, though. What do you think? I think that's probably right.
Yeah, that seems right to me, I think.
I don't know if a 10-year-old could get this, but a 12-year-old probably could.
What about the popularity history?
The growing popularity of this one to me makes a lot of sense. I think that we are in an era of board gaming now where the Euros are just getting bigger and bigger, if not in production and just like how much table they take up. The rules are a little more complicated, or the components are just these big grandiose things. And this game provides a lot of strategic depth at a price that is way, way under what these bigger type of games are going for, whether it be through crowdfunding or even just retail price. And so I can see where it's popular. It's easy to learn. Once you know it, you don't have to go back to the rule book much. And if just new big games are overwhelming you, you can come to something like Pan Am and get a lot of strategic depth in a short amount of time. I can see why this one is growing.
Yeah, I kind of thought exactly the same thing. Like, it makes perfect sense to me. It makes sense to me that it started out in the top 500 almost immediately, and it makes sense to me that it's continuing to rise. And it's timeless, I think, in a lot of ways. And I think we're going to see that reflected as it continues to live in the top 500.
All right, Jessica, I think we can go ahead and start landing this plane, pun totally intended. Let's do some highlights and lowlights here. I'll get us going. For highlights, this game has an amazing thematic retro feel. If that's something you're into, if thematics and looks of games are your thing and you appreciate Pan Am, this is going to be the game for you. I think another highlight is that the game has a lot of deep gameplay. I think this gives it a huge reach amongst all gamers of all levels, all player counts even. I would say the replay value is very, very high because there is so much variety in those Pan Am cards and who you play with and how they play at a price point that just absolutely cannot be beat. For lowlights, though, the randomness can hurt you. The randomness in the event cards, how much the stock is set, that can make your game pretty difficult. The player interaction is slightly mean. If that's something you don't like, you're not going to have a good time here, especially when you get screwed. And if you don't like retro, if you're on the opposite side of that, you might find the game to be pretty boring looking, and that might give you a bland experience overall.
For me, we're going to have a lot of overlap. For me, the biggest highlight is it's surprisingly variable for how simple and straightforward it is. You really get a different game every time. But also, I love the theme and the artwork, the look of it, aesthetically, the feel of it, which is kind of one of the things that you said. And I think it's just an amazing value for the price right now. That's a huge highlight for me. For being able to find it used for $5 for everything that you get, that is a steal. Lowlights, the bidding can get a little frustrating, especially with a higher player count. You can lose out on things that you really needed, and it can just turn your game upside down. You know, the adaptability is part of the fun, but if you're not prepared for that, it can really just screw your whole day up. I don't know if you really get to take full advantage of the bigger planes because they come into the game so late. And depending on how many players you have, you might not even get an opportunity to buy one of those bigger planes, which would be a really big bummer because that's like half the fun. In a sentence, Pan Am is a very straightforward concept done in a dynamic and interesting way that forces you to adapt to the shifting economy with little ability to plan ahead.
And I would say, in a sentence, Pan Am will offer players of all experience levels an engaging and challenging, yet still very approachable game at a price that cannot be beat.
So what do you think, Bryce? Are we bringing this one back to the table?
I absolutely am.
Yeah, I said yes, definitely.
All right, that wraps it up for today. Give us your thoughts on Pan Am. What do you think about this game? Give us your highlights and lowlights from wherever you're listening. Drop a comment. We want to see a bebop and scatting all over those comment sections about today's game and about what you think of the show overall. Also want to note, check out the description of this show. There is a podcast about Pan Am, its history, the planes, the people. If this is a company you're interested in, if this history does interest you, check out that link in the description to the Pan Am podcast. It's going to get into the whole world that was Pan Am. I've listened to a few episodes. It's actually quite fantastic.
And now it's time for a big, exciting announcement. We've got our favorite season. Autumn is just around the corner. As we mentioned, we are blue from the Arizona summer, so the fall is going to be a nice reprieve, sort of. So, to celebrate our favorite time of year, we're doing a big 2-part autumn special. So, stay tuned for that. It's going to be a lot of fun.
We're talking all things autumn games, autumn activities. It's going to be very fun, absolutely. Also, we have some episodes coming up that are going to be featuring special guests, including podcasters you probably listened to and have heard before. Not sure when those will be out. Our focus is on the autumn episodes, but we are working on them. Things are moving and shaking, so stay tuned for all of that and more. We want to thank you for listening to the Back to the Table podcast today. My name is Bryce. That is Jessica, and we will catch you next time.
Bye-bye.